Friends, I want to explore pivot tables with you now. Pivot tables are a great way to summarize data from a spreadsheet in a really dynamic, editable, customizable way so you can quickly figure out sums, averages, totals, what have you. Let's take a look. Anywhere in your spreadsheet, let's go ahead and we're going to click on Data, Pivot Table. Now the first thing it's going to ask you is what is the range of data from which you want to draw? And it has correctly assumed that I want to draw from this attendance sheet and that I want all of it, going from A1 all the way down to J123, which is the very bottom right-hand entry. And it's helpful to include that header row so that it knows that those are headers. And you'll see what this is going to look like in a moment. Let's insert this on a new sheet. Great. So we've got our pivot table and it's got absolutely nothing going on right now, and that's totally fine. For the rows in this case, maybe I'll put our session leaders. So on rows, I'm going to add session leaders. And so on the rows, it's given all of the different session leaders that there are. And so for instance, we can immediately go ahead and put in some values. The values are going to show up here. And so maybe I want to say, what was the sum of the hours led by this presenter, led by these presenters, led by that presenter, led by this presenter. And it gives the sum of the hours, for instance. You could summarize by sum, count, average, maximum, medium, whatever. In this case, sum makes sense. Let me take that away. Maybe I wanted to figure out how many total stipends were accrued through sessions led by these particular people. And that's great, and we can go on and we could do different rows. Instead of leaders, you could do, we could do our sessions. So here are all the different session names, and we could say, how many hours total were accumulated for each of these particular sessions, or how many dollars worth of stipends were accrued for each session, what have you. But you can get even more granular. So maybe in the rows, I'm going to put the session leaders. In the columns, I'm going to put the session names. And give me a moment here. I'm going to do a little bit of visual formatting, make sure things look kind of groovy. And so now, if I do something like hours, maybe sum of hours. So now what the pivot table has done is it says, 4.5 hours were led by Bobby for this particular session. Creative assessments. Now, it happens to be that each session had one leader, and most leaders had one session, but it could have been the case that this particular session could have had some done by Ariana, some done by Kira, some done by Randy, some done by Bobby, and it gives you a sum of the hours for each session on the bottom, a sum of the hours for each person on the right. Let me do a little freezing here, view, freeze, one column. Right, so it kind of gives you the sum of their hours, but it kind of gives you this nice breakdown too. Again, from values, I could instead say, show me the total stipends. Which sessions and which people were accounting for the most stipends in this case. And so that was just one example of how one might use a pivot table. It is very, very customizable, and it will help sift through data in a way that might reveal some stories or some trends, who knows what, but I just wanted to make you aware of it because it is a super potent tool.